Hey guys, what's going on? Hermdo back with you on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. I'm stuck inside. I just drank a whole tall boy of Bud Light and I'm feeling pretty good. I got my Zins here. We're rocking out, baby. We're rocking out. It's Tuesday. Just a quick announcement. One of my videos I had to remove, the video about Pizzagate. I got a warning on my YouTube channel. If I get another warning in the next 3 months, I'm going to get a strike. And I don't want to be messing around with that kind of stuff. But I found a video that I tried streaming previously. Unfortunately, one of the videos I was watching was like copyrighted. I got a bunch of warnings, so I'm just like, okay. But they talked about German time travel experiments, and they mentioned Die Glocke or Die Glocke. And let's check this out. The secret Nazi projects of World War II, the mysterious Die Glocke. Perhaps one of the most mysterious Nazi projects was Die Glocke, the bell. This project allegedly involved advanced physics and has led to theories of anti-gravity experiments or even time manipulation. However, the concrete evidence remains elusive, and much of what is claimed about Die Glocke is speculative. The true purpose is still debated by historians. This looks like a AI rendering of like a news story about Die Glocke, but secret Nazi projects. Throughout World War II, Nazi Germany invested heavily in covert research and development projects aimed at securing a military advantage. Some of these initiatives became infamous for their innovation, secrecy, and ambition, like the V2 rocket program, all this other kind of stuff here. I found this Wikipedia article about Die Glocke. All sorts of stuff on here. Let's check out the Wikipedia real quick. Let's get into that. The Bell, Die Glocke, was a purported top secret scientific technological device wonder weapon, or Wunderwaffe, developed in the 1940s in Nazi Germany. Rumors of the device have persisted for decades after World War II and were used as a plot trope in the fiction novel Lightning by Dean Koontz. First fully described by Polish journalist and author Igor Witkowski in Prawda o Wunderwaffe, it was later popularized by military journalist author Nick Cook, who associated with Nazi occultism, anti-gravity, and free energy suppression research. Mainstream reviewers have criticized claims about Die Glocke as being pseudoscientific, recycled rumors, and a hoax. Die Glocke and other alleged Nazi miracle weapons have been dramatized in video games, television shows, and novels. In his 2001 book, The Hunt for Zero Point, author Nick Cook identified claims about Die Glocke as having originated in the 2000 Polish book Prawda o Wunderwaffe, The Truth About the Wonder Weapons, by Igor Witkowski. Cook described Witkowski's claims of a device called the Bell, engineered by Nazi scientists, that was a glowing, rotating contraption rumored to have some kind of anti-gravitational effect, be a time machine, or be part of SS anti-gravity program for a flying saucer. According to Cook, Die Glocke was bell-shaped, about 4 meters, 12 feet high, and 3 meters, 9 feet in diameter, and incorporated 2 high-speed, counter-rotating cylinders filled with a purplish, liquid, metallic-looking substance that was supposed to be highly radioactive, codenamed Zerum 525. Cook recounts claims that scientists and technicians who worked on the Bell and did not die of its effect were wiped out by the SS at the close of the war, and the device was moved to an unknown location. Cook proposed the SS official Hans Kammler later secretly traded his technology to the U.S. military in exchange for his freedom. Witkowski suggested a concrete ring called the Henge near the Wenceslas mine built in 1943 or 1944, and vaguely resembling Stonehenge was used to tether the Bell during tests. According to writer Jason Colavito, the structure is merely the remains of an ordinary industrial cooling tower. So, interesting. The Henge, Wenceslas. See that? We got all sorts of crazy stuff going on here. Let's check this out. Hold on one second. The Henge. What was the name of that? Wenceslas. Okay. Henge, Wenceslas. Secret of the Nazi Bell Atomic TV. During the last month of the Second World War, German scientists worked long hours in an attempt to produce Krisenscheiben, which is thought to be war-winning technology that would produce a stunning knockout blow. Deep in the Wenceslas mine near Ludwigwich in Poland, Nazi SS scientists reportedly worked an anti-gravity machine called the Bell. A glowing radiating contraption looked like a flying saucer and was used in a conjunction with the above-ground structure known as the Henge. The Bell was described as a saucer-shaped device made from hard, heavy metal that was filled with a substance similar to mercury and required enormous amounts of electrical power for testing. People who worked for the project were said to have suffered from sleep problems and severe vertigo. Henge still stands today as an enigmatic structure that comprises Thick reinforced pillars designed to withstand extreme forces. Artist David Bickerstaff and Lukas, I cannot pronounce that name, traveled to the site of the henge in Poland to document the structure and explore hidden secrets. Nazi Bell buried in the abandoned mines below. So here's some pictures of it. Interesting stuff. Let's see if we can find any pictures. Here it is right here. Can't really see. It's not a great picture. Oh, shit. Hang on. Here it is. Here's a better picture of it. You can see it right here. See the pillars there. The mysterious structure left behind on the Polish mountainside, sometimes called Hitler's Stonehenge. Yeah. Near the village of Ludowiczice, Klodishki in Silesia, Poland, there's a massive concrete dodecahedron frame, top 12 concrete pillars, dozens of feet high. This is part of World War II bunker site that was abandoned by the fleeing Nazis when Soviet forces captured it in 1945. Its function, original contents, have not been publicly revealed. The structure is situated atop of Project Riese, a secret series of under tunnels dug by concentration camp prisoners in the Polish countryside. Look at that. Look at that in a second. Structure's official name for World War II is not publicly known, but is commonly called Muchopalka, Mucholapka, a nickname bestowed upon it by a Polish journalist. A Mucholapka is a traditional Western European fly trap, a kind of glass decanter that lures insects into watery death through the hole in space. This name sums up intrigue surrounding the unexplained structure. There is suggested maybe the base of unfinished water cooling tower, one of the many wartime weapon projects abandoned around Europe by the Nazis. However, some people suggested its alternative theory without supporting evidence. But it was a launch pad for flying saucers assembled by Nazis using alien blueprints. This caused an eerie shadow on the Machopka's name. According to this improbable theory, perhaps the structure was meant to beam unsuspecting victims into the belly of a UFO, much like a fly into a trap. Equally speaking, nickname into the structure is Hitler's Stonehenge, due to the blocky pillars arranged like an ancient henge. This association with prehistoric monumental henge adds another layer of mystery to this enigmatic ruin. Interesting here. Here's some better pictures. Okay, I'll allow the goddamn cookies. Jesus. Yeah. There it is right there. What could this possibly be? Part of a water cooling tower? Or is it something else? Is it something else? Cheating Wonders, a new Nazi gold scam. The lost train packed with ill-gotten Nazi gold in the Polish city of Walsbrich. Good peninsula. Gangers demanding to be paid before they reveal the location. Okay. Yeah, all sorts of weird Nazi stuff going on here. But I found this video. We're going to watch a little bit of it and see what they have to say about this Nazi Bell D. Glocke.
Einstein believed that for time travel to be successful, it would need to be at the speed of light, and that traveling at that speed slows the time. Reaching the speed of light will stop time, and if it will be ever possible to pass the speed of light, time will reverse. Another theory was that time passes slower for objects in a gravitational field than for an object which is far from such a field, but he said it was possible. Did the Germans invent a time machine, being an anti-gravitational machine known as Die Glocke, or the bell?
Die Glocke, okay.
What was the purpose of the supposed anti-gravity machine? If they were successful, why do we not have their captured prototype and research?
Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former soldier, Marine Corps scout sniper, history professor, historian and book author, and we will answer these questions and other issues on this segment of Forgotten History.
German scientists were unfettered by cost restrictions and an inexhaustible supply of slave labor, so German firms were given free rein and created the most revolutionary machines and projects in human history up to that time. The earliest mentions come from the 1920s during the Weimar era, with the supposed development of the RFZ-1 anti-gravitational flying saucer, possibly with an anti-magnetic propulsion system. This research was created in 1923 and continued after the creation of the Society for Space Travel in 1927 in Berlin, of which Dr. Werner von Braun was a member. The bell was to be the vehicle for time travel, and was described as being constructed from about 3 inches of ceramic-based content, about 14 feet in height, and about 9 feet wide at the base. The supposed fuel for this project was beryllium, called red mercury, or Zerum 525, and due to the design as well as the fuel, the bell was considered dangerous. This fuel was used in the Messerschmitt Me-163B Comet and V-2 rockets, combining the mixtures to create rocket propulsion. So why was the Bell fuel, if true, also so volatile? And why was it required for anti-gravity? As may have been expected, given the top-secret nature of these projects, Heinrich Himmler had to have his foot in the door and his SS managing every aspect of most of these programs. His appointee, SS Lieutenant General Dr. Hans Kammler, was the force behind most of the top-secret projects, working in conjunction with Reich Armaments Minister Albert Speer. Under Kammler's direction, the SS was in control of these projects, with some Army oversight, such as Major General Walter Dornberger at Peenemünde, where the expert scientists were involved in the V2 project. Others believed to be involved in the anti-gravitational belt project were Dr. Werner Heisenberg and Dr. Werner Magnus Maximilian Freiherr Baron von Braun.
You know, a big reason that America was able to reach the moon was because of Operation Paperclip bringing over Nazi scientists. Werner von Braun was a big part of that. And you have to wonder, you know, it's a dark thought. I don't mean to suggest anything untoward or anything like that, but you have to wonder what would happen, like if World War II never happened and Germany was able to continue with these research projects for an indefinite amount of time. I mean, would we have achieved time travel by now? Supersonic flight? I mean, not supersonic flight, but like faster than light travel, that kind of thing. What kind of things would we have achieved? What kind of technology were the Nazis working on? And, you know, where did they get all those ideas from? I don't know. I mean, we know German engineering is some of the best on the planet, but I mean, we're talking 80, 90, 100 years ago, and this stuff is so advanced. You got to wonder, where did this all come from? Was it just all on the mind of the Nazis or something? You know, you got to question, you know, how this stuff was developed, where this stuff came from. You know, it's an interesting theory, and there's lots of layers to this. Keep digging into it.
Who would be the greatest prize captured by the United States? Heisenberg was the chief physicist on Hitler's atomic bomb project, working with uranium. Yet despite his capture and post-war interrogations, the Bell project never came up. Heisenberg had built an atomic reactor, yet was never able to complete his atomic bomb project for a variety of reasons. Likewise, von Braun, the rocket genius, never mentioned the project as he created the Redstone, Gemini, and Apollo programs and the Saturn V rocket. Yet, although Operation Paperclip harvested the best and brightest German minds in the fields of science, nuclear fission, electronics, aeronautics, and rocketry, and Operation Lusty grabbed all the high-tech German weapons, aircraft, and technology, why did they not also capture the mysterious and unknown Bell and its scientists, along with their research documentation? The Western Allies had the V-1 flying bomb.
You gotta wonder, how much technology are we, the public, not aware of? How much of this stuff, some classified documents leak, weirdos like me on YouTube talk about it. But you gotta wonder, where's all this like secret technology? Is it being hidden from us? Did it exist at all? Is it all in some document, some CIA cover up or some shit like that? I mean, what is the government not teaching us? How much technology do they have with all these underground tunnels and bunkers? What are they not telling us? I mean, this stuff could change, you know, space travel. It could change like how we travel on the planet. You know, God knows what's available, what's really out there, what's been developed in the last century and been kept under wraps. I mean, the secrets, it kind of boggles the mind just thinking about the kind of stuff that they haven't been telling us over the last 100 years.
The V-2 ballistic missile, the Messerschmitt Me-262, the Heinkel HE-162 Volksjäger, or People's Fighter, and the Arado AR-234 jets, the Messerschmitt Me-163B Comet, and the Bockum 349 Natter rocket fighters, and the Fritz 10 radio-guided missile that sank the Italian battleship Roma, etc. They had also captured and built the high-tech electric-powered stealth submarines with propulsion systems that were decades ahead of the Allies' technology. Also captured were additional ultra-sensitive radio, airborne radars, and emission detection systems used by the Luftwaffe Night Fighter Force, as well as infrared technology. But what about the Bell? Yet despite the lack of any mention of the Bell in immediate post-World War II intelligence and interrogations, in 1960 there was a French publication titled The Morning of the Magicians, translated into English in 1963 that first mentioned the Bell Project. Some of these subjects also included Himmler's and Hitler's fascination with the occult, other secret projects already mentioned, and even Germany's handling of UFOs for gathering their technology. Part of this theory was sustained by the development of the various Horten aircraft designs, such as the Horten HO-229 Flying Wing, also known as the New York Bomber. It has been surmised that the Horten brothers used captured alien technology in their design of their aircraft designated number 18, which is the design of the Northrop Grumman B-2 stealth bomber. Due to the perceived mass of German...
So much of this stuff that was developed in Germany in the 1930s and 40s is still in use by the U.S. military. So much of this stuff, you can tell this flying wing, yeah, obviously, heavily, influenced the B-2 bomber design. It's kind of wild thinking of all this kind of stuff. It's kind of freaky, is alien technology, who were the Germans communicating with exactly? What's all this occult stuff? It's really freaky stuff, and it's just like you peel away the layers, it just kind of keeps going and going and going, and there's so much stuff that just hasn't been disclosed yet. It really makes you think.
German technology and the subsequent research and development at places such as Area 51, the rise in UFO interest is probably explained. The greatest issue with researching the Bell is the unusual lack of documentation, which is contrary to all the other Germany-operated special weapons and development projects, all of which became part of Operations Paperclip and Lusty at the end of the war. In fact, it would appear that the only hard source is from a supposedly affluent and interesting Polish intelligence officer who was privy to documents gathered from the interrogations of captured SS project officers. However, we do not have the names or copies of any of this documentation. Otherwise, the very story itself seems to have possibly sprang from the intense interest and sensationalism of the science fiction community and conspiracy theorists. Rumors even surfaced that Hitler used the time machine to escape to parts unknown. Even the moon has been mentioned. The anti-gravity mechanism would have been revolutionary if in fact it existed and worked. NASA and the Russian space programs and even private companies, not the least of which being Boeing and others, are known to have been actively working on such a project for decades. It would only make sense that if in fact Germany had developed a working model of the Bell, then why was it not in use? On December 9, 1965, a large fireball was seen by thousands of people as it flew across northeast Canada and the USA, crashing in a forest in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, about 30 miles northeast of Pittsburgh, a heavily populated area. The U.S. Army sealed off the area and listed the event as a crashed UFO, and then went to investigate. Despite the rumors and conspiracy theories, it was determined that the UFO was in fact the Soviet satellite Cosmos 96 that had re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, leaving a long fire trail behind it. Many initially believed that this was in fact the Nazi Bell that had been traveling through time and returned to Earth. The only seemingly supportive piece of evidence is the Hinge in Poland, where the structure was believed to have been where the Bell was being developed and tested. But if so, then that would have placed the Bell technology and scientists within reach of the Red Army, so logically they would have secured the evidence unless the workers escaped to the west with von Braun and Dornberger. Other than rumors, we do not have any confirmation that the Bell ever existed, but it does make for a good story.
We hope you enjoyed this segment of Forgotten History.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's see what else YouTube has to offer on this kind of stuff. It's really fascinating. Cook's publication is a topic national critically discussing the subject. Most recently, historian Eric Kurlander discussed the topic in his 2017 book on Nazi-era esotericism, Hitler's monster supernatural history of the Third Reich. According to reviewer Julian Strube, Kurlander cites from the reservoir of post-conspiracy theories that heavily relies on sensational accounts, mixing up contemporary sources with post-war sensationalist literature, half-truth, and fictitious accounts. Uh-oh, that's not good. The secret weapon of the World War II they hid from you, Mystery Matrix. Check this kind of stuff. Come on, baby.
Did the SS perfect an anti-gravity machine at the end of World War II? Could Nazis teleport between dimensions? Did Hitler escape to the moon aboard this fantastic craft? Don't be alarmed, I'm not self-medicating, but rather repeating some of the claims that have been made in the popular media and on the internet concerning a device known in German as Die Glocke, or in English, the bell, the existence of which is a hotly contested topic. As an historian, I've decided to seek out the truth behind the headlines and discover whether Die Glocke was a real machine, or whether the story is, as some suggest, bovine excrement. Die Glocke exists against a background of real history that is fairly astounding and historically indisputed. German scientists and engineers created a plethora of highly advanced machines that to a World War II audience would have seemed to be almost from the pages of science fiction. They built jet fighters like the Messerschmitt Me-262, the rocket interceptor, the Bachem Natter, the V-1 robot bomb, the V-2, the world's first practical ballistic missile, and plenty more besides. And all these weapons were built by a sinister, secretive regime that used slave labor and inhabited a world of vast underground bases worthy of a James Bond novel. In short, Nazi Germany was fertile ground for exaggerating historical truth. Die Glocke entered the public consciousness in 2000 in a book that spawned several more examining this phenomenon. All were in agreement that the man who created Die Glocke, or at least was administratively in charge, was SS Obergruppenführer Dr. Hans Kammler, the sinister head of the V for Vengeance weapons program. Fortunately for all concerned, Hans Kammler was straight out of central casting, an almost comic book Nazi villain who managed to disappear into thin air at war's end in May 1945, never to be seen again. I made a video about this disappearing act, link in the end screen. According to many internet sources, which all seem to reference the book I mentioned from 2000 and another from 2001, the SS designed and built the strange anti-gravitation craft, whose shape gave it the name the Bell, powered by a mysterious fuel called Serum-525, otherwise known as red mercury. Die Glocke was very dangerous and unstable, but I won't describe how it was operated, as all explanations are entirely theoretical. Suffice it to say, the Bell was described as being between 12...
Let's take a look at this thing real quick. This is about Hans Kammler, the guy who was in charge of Die Glocke. But let's get into this a little bit. Hans Kammler, Hitler's Last Hope in American Hands. This is from 2019. Immediately after the end of World War II, the victorious powers began to interrogate the functional elites of the National Socialist state. When the question came to the German V weapons programs, jet fighters, and underground armament facilities, the name of Hans Kammler was mentioned again and again. In the final phase of the war, the SS Obergruppenführer was head of the office and Unit C of the Economic Administration main office of the SS, had been given far-reaching competence for the production and use of the latest weapons. The Allies were aware of Kammler, even though they knew far from anything about this underground shadow realm. His role in the Holocaust and mass use of concentration camp inmates and construction project. They researched intensively for him, according to the standard narrative, until only a few years ago came too late. Kammler allegedly evaded his culpability and committed suicide in Bohemia on 9th of May, 1945. Doubts of his account, however, were never completely silenced, especially since his body never located. All personal documents remained missing. General Fleming, a leading Holocaust researcher, wanted certainty, not find sufficient evidence that the suicide narrative was not true. Fleming urged his story to not rest, but continue his research. In the article, Ein Insider Selbstmord, U.S. Obergruppenführer Hans Kammler and create a staged suicide to Hitler's last hopeful. SS Obergruppenführer Hans Kammler survived the war. Published in the magazine in 2014. For the first time, these classified document statements were presented, which suggest that Hans Kammler was captured by counterintelligence corps and American military intelligence service. Most important evidence for this thesis was a report by Special Investigator Oscar Paquet, dated August 1949. Paquet, who worked for the Department of the U.S. military government in Hesse, responsible for denazification, concluded his report as follows. The suicide of the subject, suspected and allegedly confirmed by witnesses, is refuted by the CIC's precise information about his capture and escape in May 1945. Evidence that the subject is now in Soviet custody and is to work on Soviet occupation zone of Germany cannot be provided here. Paquet had been informed of the CIC and Kamler's capture and subsequent escape. Was it possible a high-ranking SS general and the staff to escape from the American captivity? With the real estimate, the staff of the Messerschmitt works in Aberamagro, as the Paquet report states, by American troops on May 9th, was able to escape there with senior SS leaders as his staff. Did the events, in fact, take place at the underground Messerschmitt plant, Bergkristall, in Gusen near Linz? Is it likely that Paquet did not learn true circumstances of Kamler's arrest from the Counterintelligence Corps? Recently, Donald W. Richardson, a special agent of the CIC, Office of Strategic Services, has emerged as the key. Shortly before his death, he told us that he had brought Hans Himmler to the United States for reasons of national security and had to remain silent about it. Despite these sources, the Richardson statement doubts about the chain and circumstantial evidence persisted. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. So where is Hans Himmler? What's going on with all this secret Nazi experiments? What's going on here? It's creepy.
9 feet wide and made of 3-inch thick ceramic material. And just in case anyone was unaware of its origin, a large swastika was conveniently placed on the side for identification purposes. So who actually built this device? Here we run into roadblocks, or more precisely, a complete lack of documentary evidence. This is unusual, as the Germans carefully recorded everything else that they did in World War II. Yet when it comes to Die Glocke, the paper trail is stone cold.
That is interesting. We know so much about this stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff, like I said before, was hidden, but a lot of the stuff gets declassified. There's extensive documentation. A lot of this Nazi technology, most of it, or much of it, was adopted by American military for military purposes or research purposes. But there's like nothing about this thing. The guy, there's no clear answer as to what happened to Hans Himmler, where he is, who he got captured by, if he suicided or God knows what. But it's just kind of interesting to see, this kind of thing. Was it actually a real thing? What was it underdeveloped using this beryllium stuff? It's under development rather. But yeah, I just let's dig a little more deeply. Let's see what else this guy has to say.
In fact, it appears that the modern evidence for the existence of Die Glocke seems to rest on one author's alleged conversations with a Polish intelligence officer who had access to a secret dossier of material from the interrogation of SS involved with the project. Various names have been suggested, largely due to their proximity to real Nazi secret programs, one of the foremost being Dr. Werner Heisenberg. Heisenberg was one of the foremost German physicists to work for the Nazis and was a leader in the German atomic bomb program, which slowly and rather unsuccessfully attempted to construct a nuclear reactor, partially successful, and build an atomic weapon, unsuccessful, before the war ended. We know where Heisenberg was and what he was working on throughout the war. He was also handily captured by the Americans in 1945 and thoroughly interrogated by them, but failed to mention Die Glocke. Well, there were plenty of Nazi scientists who could have been involved with the Bell. Yes, and the US captured and shipped nearly all of Nazi Germany's best scientific minds to the States in a top-secret operation codenamed Paperclip just after the war. Could the US have also captured Die Glocke and shipped that to the States as well? In fact, Die Glocke was not first mentioned in 2000, but rather in 1960 in France in a book titled The Morning of the Magicians. Translated into English in 1963, it covered a series of Nazi topics that all had some dash of real history at their core. For example, Nazi UFOs, Nazi occultism, and Die Glocke. Regarding UFOs or flying saucer craft, the Horten brothers had built flying wings for the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, and the brothers and their designs ended up in the US in 1946. You can see how the Horten design would influence later US aircraft like the B-2 stealth bomber. Some have suggested that Nazi flying wings and US-derived test vehicles contributed to the UFO craze of the 1950s. And regarding Nazi occultism, again, there is a dash of truth behind the story. Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, was a notorious crank and used the German castle, Wewelsburg, as a sort of holy SS temple where some strange pseudo-religious ceremonies and researches were conducted. This is fact, but it is open to sensational reinterpretations by certain authors and TV companies. The subjects in the book The Morning of the Magicians fed into the 1960s counterculture and the later 1970s and 80s New Age movement. Die Glocke was presented as fact, but a fact bereft of any supporting evidence. Such ideas as Die Glocke were also very popular in the pulp fiction of the 1960s and 70s, where the Nazis were portrayed as having developed some truly astounding secret technologies, including space travel and even time travel. The reason this sort of nonsense arose was precisely because the Americans were astounded by the high-tech weapons that they uncovered, the jet and rocket planes, the ballistic missiles, the secret underground bases, the flying wings, the electro U-boats, and so much more. In the post-war period of atomic bombs and Cold War tensions, imaginations were given free rein, particularly as the UFO craze emerged into the popular consciousness in the 1950s, and Americans were being exposed to a huge amount of sci-fi movies and TV shows that often referenced evil Nazi scientists and their otherworldly inventions. Die Glocke was supposed to be an anti-gravity machine, so did the Germans experiment with anti-gravity, as they seem to have experimented with everything else, from jets to rockets to the occult. Perhaps is the answer, but again, not much evidence exists. However, according to some periodicals, NASA has been experimenting with anti-gravity, or should I say the manipulation of gravity, since the early 1990s. The Russians have likewise been doing the same, and even published a scientific paper that described an anti-gravity device they built in 1992. For all NASA...
Let me double check something here. Look at the Philadelphia experiment. You know, maybe we'll check that out. Let's check out the Philadelphia experiment after we get done. Let's check out NASA anti-gravity 1992. NASA's involvement with anti-gravity research was primarily focused on understanding and analyzing claims made by Russian physicist Evgeny Podklinov regarding a device that appeared to shield objects from gravity. Podklinov's work, published in Physica C, described a superconductor magnet-based device that potentially reduced an object's weight, while NASA did not directly pursue anti-gravity research with the same fervor as other areas that did investigate Podklinov's claims of similar concepts through approaches like the Breakthrough Propulsion Physics Project. So let's check this out. NASA primarily focused on the space shuttle program and beginning to understand the effects of long-duration space flight. Space Shuttle Endeavour's first mission, STS-49, involved capturing and repairing the Intelsat 6 satellite, that included the first and only three-person spacewalk. Mae Jemison became the first African-American woman in space that year, flying the STS-47. Additionally, NASA conducted experiments to study the effects of long-duration space flight. Okay. Interesting stuff. But, experiment. Including the personal spacewalk. Doesn't really get you much information on this kind of stuff. Mission STS-49. Anti-gravity. NASA's anti-gravity research. This is from Slate. Don't call it anti-gravity research, Ron Koshor pleads. He's a physicist at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Talking about a project working on for almost a decade called gravity modification, gravity anomalies, and anti-gravity. That's a red flag. That's from 2002, so I don't know. When people find out the National Aeronautics and Space Administration has research working on sci-fi stuff like anti-gravity, or rather gravity modification, the red flags do indeed start waving. Reputable scientists like Kosher earned polite disdain from colleagues, or worse, from founders of research. But truth, the NASA has been studying the manipulation of gravity for these 10 years, as well as have non-government researchers. That's against work at the Russian physicist named Evgeny Podklinov, published an article in peer-reviewed journal Physica C in 1992. Podklinov claimed the device was built around a superconductor and a magnet that could shield objects from gravity. Which, like we said, was to make a superconducting disk about a foot in diameter, chill it, levitate it over magnets. to property of superconductors that they repel magnetic fields and set it revolving like a compact disc. Podkleinoff said that object placed over the contraption lost 0.3% of its weight. The object itself didn't change, or that the gravity's effect on it lessened. Where did they get those ideas from? What's all this about? Interesting stuff.
Exceptionally deep pockets and modern computing power, it has struggled to design and build an anti-gravity device of any sort. Private companies like Boeing and BAE Systems have also dabbled in anti-gravity research. It appears that when America was gathering up hundreds of Nazi scientists in 1945 to 46 under Operation Paperclip, they managed to capture the rocket scientists and the chemical and bioweapons boffins and the aeronautical engineers, but not the anti-gravity experts. To this day, we don't know their names, where they worked, or have ever recorded even one credible document that show what they were up to under Kammler's urging. We have to pose one obvious question at this point. If Die Glocke was built and perhaps flown in 1945, and the men who built it were captured by the US or the Soviet Union, why were the Russians and Americans trying to build an anti-gravity device from scratch in the 1990s and 2000s? Surely the Nazi research would have already shown them how to do so decades before. And this leads to the most overwhelmingly obvious question of all. If Hitler had UFOs and anti-gravity flying machines, how the hell did he lose the war? So, apart from Hans Kammler and Werner Heisenberg, have any other names emerged from the literature on Die Glocke that might shed some light on whether it really existed? Many sources have mixed the German atomic bomb project with Die Glocke. Some sources state that the Bell project was run by SS Obergruppenführer Emil Mazov. But Mazov was a governor of the province of Pomerania from 1940 to 45 and a higher SS and police leader and general of police, heavily involved in the Holocaust. Before the war, he had been a factory worker and was a career SS and Nazi Party member. What use would Mazov have been to the Bell program? Another name put forward by researchers, allegedly from secret files I mentioned concerning the interrogation of SS leaders by Poland after the war, was SS Gruppenführer Jakob Sporrenberg. Again, Sporrenberg was a career SS police official involved intimately in the Holocaust in Poland and the Soviet Union. He had no scientific or engineering background, and no evidence exists for his involvement with Die Glocke. One piece of evidence often put forward by researchers who believe in the existence of Die Glocke is the Kecksburg UFO incident of 1965. On the night of the 9th of December 1965, a large fireball was viewed by thousands of people across 6 US states and Ontario in Canada. Trailing some kind of material, the object crashed in the woods at Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, 30 miles northeast of Pittsburgh. The US Army quickly cordoned off the area, adding...
Yeah, they talked about this in the last video, and they didn't really disclose what this thing was. Kind of interesting stuff. Like an old UFO sighting way back in the day. Yeah, people surmised that it was this Die Glocke thing that it came back after traveling through time.
To the mystery. Before long, a UFO was reported to have crashed, and then Die Glocke was named. The story being the object was a captured example of the Bell that crashed during tests. Regardless of what landed at Kecksburg, it soon became almost as famous as the Roswell incident in popular culture and ufology circles. NASA revealed in 2005 that the object had actually been a Soviet satellite, Cosmos 96, that re-entered the atmosphere and broke up, hence the Army cordoning around the site at the height of the Cold War and...
Let me check something out here. See if I can find it. Kecksburg incident. Let's see what Reddit has to say about this. Yeah. Today I learned of the Kecksburg, PA UFO incident. Local witnesses actually saw an unidentified object up close for U.S. military officials able to transport the object away. Looks kind of like a prototype Apollo Rancher capsule. Imagine how alien that would have been looked in 1965. NASA was conducting flight tests and boilerplate command modules in 1965. There doesn't seem to be any launched in December. A couple launched earlier in the year, though, which had long 3-year mission durations. It's possible that there was an issue with them causing it to re-enter much too soon, and they covered it up to save face. None of them look like this, though. The shape is kind of vaguely resembles a gumdrop design that is being considered early on, and which Soyuz and Shenzhou used. But no orbital tests of that shape were ever conducted. None of the flight tests up to that point ever had a reentry capable capsule. The Apollo was basically just an oddly shaped fairing for Pegasus satellite. Reentry tests were an objective. The point of these flights was to validate aerodynamics of abort tower jettison, Saturn I first stage performance, and cryogenic second stage design techniques. Of course, somebody had a camera. Interesting. I can't go back. Okay, let's go back. Oop. For God's sake. Kecksburg UFO incident. Kecksburg UFO. The Kecksburg UFO incident, which occurred on December 1965, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, involved a reported UFO crash, subsequent military involvement. Which many believe was Jennifer UFO crash, acorn-shaped object removed from the military. Some reports that NASA claimed was a meteor of Soviet satellite debris. Regardless of the official explanation, the incident remains a compelling mystery and a popular topic on the annual Kecksburg UFO Festival. Okay, this is from 2009. In the Chronicles of UFO Oddness, there's long-standing oddity. The saga, now over 4 decades old, centers on a reportedly out-of-the-sky incident involving the small town of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. The Chronicles of UFO... The date is December 9th, 1965. Read to see a ball of fire shooting through the darkening sky, and then seemingly the object purportedly shaped like a jumbo-sized acorn. After impact, makes some sort of controlled crash in the woods. From there, strange factor escalates to purported military personnel isolating the area from courteous onlookers and toting something out of the locale on a flatbed truck. A meteorite, a wayward classified aircraft, returning space hardware, of earthly origin, alien craft from afar. You pick. Whatever took place in Kecksburg, a dutiful look into the episode escalated into a lawsuit against NASA for access to information on the incident. Such a figure, the awareness is New York-based investigative journalist Leslie Keene. Working with the Coalition of Freedom of Information, she was on the receiving end of loads of documents, an outcome of winning the lawsuit. This is the stage that began in 2002 when Keene was asked to spearhead a Freedom of Information Act initiative sponsored by the Sci-Fi Channel, an effort to acquire government documents on the Kecksburg case. The following year, she ended up in the plaintiff in a federal FOIA lawsuit filed against NASA in Washington, D.C. After previously promising to conduct an expedited search for the files related to the 1965 Kecksburg UFO crash, NASA had stonewalled and was holding documents, leaving no recourse for this one, Keene explained to a just-issued reporter. A settlement 4 years later, in October 2007, required NASA to provide hundreds of new documents and pay my attorney's legal fees. NASA's resulting search, monitored by the court, was completed in August 2009. The outcome of the investigation is available in Keene's paper, which posted online this month, Coalition's website. Report flatly titled, "The conclusion of the NASA lawsuit concerning the Kecksburg PA UFO case of 1965 explains how the process worked and the results of the research after the 2007 settlement in federal court. The bottom line, no smoking gun documents were released," Keene notes, but many provocative questions and unresolved contradictions were raised by what was received, as well as by the fact that many files were missing or destroyed. Open-ended aspect of Keene's reportage is the role of Project Moondust, the U.S. government-run activity involved in examining non-U.S. space objects or objects of unknown origin. Indeed, various State Department documents show that NASA played a role in the recovery and examination of space object debris. I'm still slurring my words a little bit. You have to forgive me. But this is some crazy stuff, man. Some crazy stuff. Let's finish this video up.
Great secrecy surrounding the event.
So 20 years after World War II, this bell-shaped, acorn-shaped object lands near Pittsburgh, and the military covered it up, and a bunch of eyewitness reports say what this thing looked like, and it resembles Die Glocke, which there's no documentation for, despite like a Polish journalist talking to somebody, in 1960 or whatever. Interesting.
Whatever the truth, the story has grown up that a craft similar in shape to Die Glocke was recovered from Kecksburg by the military. Whatever it was at Kecksburg, it, like Die Glocke, has provided plenty of material for certain kinds of TV documentaries, much in vogue from the 1990s to the present. German scientists were certainly busy working on many projects that were either abandoned during the war or curtailed by Germany's surrender in May 1945. If Die Glocke existed, from some interviews conducted with scientists involved in the atomic weapons program, the bell was probably part of that program as some kind of nuclear physics device, rather than a flying time machine. And if it existed at all, remains the million-dollar question. As they say, the truth is out there.
Okay, interesting stuff. I'm going to call it there, though. Thanks for watching. If you watch this far, I really appreciate it. We'll look more into some other topics in upcoming streams. It's kind of just a fun thing, spur of the moment thing for me. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you know anything about this Die Glocke thing, Nazi secret bell time travel experiments, let me know down below. But that's all I got for you guys for right now. Enjoy the rest of the week if I don't see you, and I'll talk to you guys later.